Last week, we spent time at development camp getting a good look at the young prospects in the Predators pipeline. On today's show, we're going to tell you who stood out to us and why.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Predators podcast, and thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are your free daily Nashville Predators podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to kick off this? Oh, yeah. It's Monday, and we're back at it episode with a shout out to our Locked On Pred heads. Those are our everyday listeners who tune in each and every weekday to talk Nashville Predators hockey with us. We appreciate your support, and we love that we get to spend just a little bit of your day with you. I'm Ann Kimmel. I am a writer with Penalty Box Radio, and my friends, I have a partner in crime.
You do. I'm Emma Lingen, and I am the Predators site editor and reporter for the Hockey News.
So development camp wrapped up on Saturday with the Future Stars game at Ford Ice Center Bellevue. Emma and I were there to watch the game. Today, we are going to talk about the players who stood out to us all week at development camp. We're going to share what we specifically liked about their game, and we're also going to tell you where you can see more of these players in season as well. Plus, we got to talk about this. We think it's pretty likely Spencer Stastney is going to make the Predators lineup out of training camp. But my friends, there is a little hitch in the giddy up right now with Spencer Stastney. We're going to tell you what it is and how it could be resolved on today's show as well. Before we dive into all that, want to let you know today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As those playoffs wind down, the sports stop sportsin' like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, Emma, we spent Saturday morning out at Ford Ice Center Bellevue watching the Future Stars game wrap up, and we're going to talk about that game. We're going to talk about some of the prospects that we really enjoyed seeing over the course of last week. But let's kick off this episode talking about some news that broke on, I think it was Friday. Spencer Stastney, who is an RFA with the Nashville Predators, he has elected to go to arbitration. So before we dive into the specifics of this case, Emma, let's just lay out how does this whole work? So he received a qualifying offer. He's opted to go to arbitration. Explain in basic terms, what the heck does that mean?
Believe me, basic terms are the only kind of terms that I can explain this in. I am not a legal or finance person, but the arbitration process, first of all, just to get any, confusion out of the way, it is not a grievance. It sounds a little scary. It sounds like he's taken the Predators to court or something. It's not like that, but it is a CBA designated process. Like, this is a procedure that happens under the CBA. It doesn't mean that he's unhappy or, that he's taking the Predators to task on anything. It's just, this is what happens under the CBA. So per the CBA, his qualifying offer that he received from the team based on, it's based on a number of factors, his age, how many games of professional experience he has. The CBA lays all of that out. But with all of that, this qualifying offer that was owed to Spencer Stastney, which the team offers regardless, even if maybe they think he's worth more or whatever. This is designated by the CBA. They have to offer him this amount. So they offer him 105% of his base salary from last year. So with his base salary from last year, it was $832,500. So that means his qualifying offer that he received from the Predators this offseason was $874,125. Now, what likely happened is Stasney and his agent, his camp, whoever, probably believe he's worth more than that, which I don't think he's wrong. So, again, that means that if they elect to go to arbitration, he and the Predators can still continue negotiating for the time being. But all
That's
this
important.
Yes. And all this means is that a date will be set. I think it's sometime between July 20th and August 4th. We don't know the exact date yet. It's TBA, but there will be a date set for an arbitration hearing. So now the two sides can continue negotiating up until that date. And if they reach an agreement before the date, great. Then they don't go to the hearing and it's fine. If they don't reach an agreement, then they do go to a hearing, and that's where they bring in a third party voice, the
arbitratory
third person comes in, and essentially, both sides will state their case to that person, and then they will determine, what the appropriate salary is. So the good thing about this is Spencer Stastney is still an RFA. He's coming back to the Predators no matter what.
Correct.
It's either, he now, because he has elected to go to arbitration, that means that he's not eligible to receive an offer sheet and he can't negotiate with other teams. So he's with the Predators regardless. And again, it's not that the Predators were trying to lowball him or anything like that with the offer that they gave him. It's just literally the CBA designates that this is what they have to offer him.
Correct.
And so maybe they come to an agreement like tomorrow. I don't know. Mm-hmm. and then this is over. But if they don't, then, it could get to the hearing. Now, I will say a lot of times these cases don't even require hearings. More often than not, they get resolved before the hearing even happens. I think it was last year, the year before, none of the arbitration cases required a hearing.
Right. They all reached an agreement before their scheduled date, which right. is great.
Yeah. So I imagine that'll be the case here. Cause again, I've seen some arguments on social media, people saying like, oh, why is he going arbitration? He doesn't have a leg to stand on. He only had 4 points, blah, blah, blah. Points aren't everything, especially when you're a defenseman.
Yes.
And with the type of role that he is expected to play on this roster next year, I think it's, again, you don't get penalized, you don't get knocked for electing to go to arbitration because it's literally a procedure that happens under the CBA. So no, I think that, and again, we don't know what he's arguing, what his side is arguing, but I guess we'll find out soon. But I don't see this being a big to-do. It's just, some people freak out when they hear big, scary words like arbitration and they don't know what that means. But, he's one of 14 players in the NHL who has elected. Teams can also choose to take players to arbitration, but that obviously didn't happen here. But yeah, just something to keep an eye on.
Yeah. And I am with you in the sense that, the thing to remember is that a lot of this is just procedural. The qualifying offer, it's not like Nashville. I mean, Nashville has to give it's very specific amount. And then what happens in the arbitration process is each team brings their kind of offer, and the arbitrator will kind of make that final decision. But again, I'm with you. I think this is probably one that's going to be settled right away. And I will say this, just for what it's worth, I am not involved in NHL arbitration in any way, shape, or form. Can't even say the name of the role. But I don't blame Spencer Stastney for this, because I do think you're looking at a young player who is going to be asked to play potentially a significant role next year for this team. I think he has a pretty unique skill set that the team wants and needs, that has a value to it. And again, this does not mean that there is a rift in the relationship between Stasney, his camp, his agent, and the Nashville Predators. This is just a procedure. Now, I will say this. When you go to arbitration, part of that is you sit down in a room and the player says, this is why I think I'm worth this. And then they have to sit in the room while the team says, well, this is why you are not worth that. And so that could perhaps feel a little bit awkward, but this does not mean that there is some sort of rift in
that's
with the team and
well, and that's
staffing.
why these things usually you hope it doesn't make it to that point, because
Yes.
that doesn't happen until you have a hearing. And a lot of these end up not even making it to the hearing. So I think, another thing to keep in mind is like people are saying, oh, he's an RFA. He's so young. Why is he going to arbitration? He's 24, which is actually
Mhm.
kind of old for like a young RFA. I mean, most of these guys like Phil Tomasino, Yuso Parsonen, like all the other guys that kind of in that same category are all younger. They're like 22. So I
Right.
think that, he's probably no, it doesn't sound like a big difference, but it makes a difference. And I think he's probably thinking about that. And as we have discussed at length on this show, I am sure he
Take it
went
home.
he went and calculated the cost of living in Nashville and calculated his projected tax return, because that is what he does.
In his free
And
time for fun.
yes, for fun, without a calculator, I'm
Mhm.
sure. And he just said, the math ain't math, and I need some more money. So
Okay,
I'm pretty
wait.
sure.
I got to stop you on that because I don't believe Spencer Stastney says ain't.
No, you're right. It's like
That
the
math is not mathing.
correct. You're right.
Yeah.
No, he definitely went and crunched the numbers in his head without a calculator.
Yes.
Did his taxes, did my taxes, did your taxes, and then, came to the conclusion that he needed more money, which
Yes.
would not surprise me in the least.
Yeah. And to this whole situation, I say pay the young man. Pay the young
Hey, the
man.
young man.
I'm certain that he and his team are not asking for some sort of ridiculous astronomical amount. But I do think the role that he is likely to be asked to play, I think it's fair that they went to arbitration. And again, Em and I will keep our eye on this situation. Very likely to be resolved very soon. Not a big deal. But like Emma pointed out, you hear the situation described and you think, oh my gosh, is there a rift between the Predators and Spencer Stastney? Nah, they're just doing exactly what's been laid out that they have to do. This is the procedure. So we'll keep an eye on that, let you know when that gets settled. And like you said, Emma, I expect that's going to be sooner rather than later. So we'll keep our eye on that. Pay the man. Pay the man.
Pay the man.
Pay the man.
His side hustle doing our taxes isn't gonna make him that much money. I can't pay him enough.
So yeah, let's just let his full-time job cover the cost of living. I don't think that's asking too much. Yeah. Coming up, we're going to talk about some even younger players than Spencer Stastney. We're going to talk about our takeaways from development camp. We're going to tell you about the players that stood out to us and talk about that Future Stars game on Saturday. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we all know that those sports are not sports in like we want them to. Fewer games, and we're wondering what to do. Well, friends, FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open up that FanDuel app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head on over to fanduel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, Emma, we talked last week about all this free agency, all these big moves. This week, we're going to kind of dive into looking at what do those moves mean for the current Predators players. And you know what? We may take a look and perhaps speculate on lineups ourselves coming up later this week. So make sure you stay tuned in this week to Locked On Predators. But today, want to talk about who we lovingly refer to as the Little Sprouts. Of course, development camp wrapped up on Saturday with the Future Stars game. And development camp is such a cool thing. And it's one of those things that I think the Nashville Predators really have taken very, very seriously for a long period of time. Other organizations, of course, do something similar as well. But development camp really is an opportunity for the organization to get eyes on these draftees, these prospects, some invitees as well, kind of gauge where they're at, see what they're doing, sit down with them. And they do a lot of off ice work as well. We got to watch them on ice during the week. And it was really, really fun. One of the most fun things about development camp is that we get to see Mark Borowiecki. He does a lot. Obviously, he's a development coach for the Nashville Predators now, and he does a lot with these players. Asked him a little bit about what he wants these young players to take away from Dev Camp, and this is what Mark Borowiecki had to say about overall what he wants these prospects to take away.
I seen in a kind of a little bit of a release that the Preds did with internal video, David Good mentioning like, hey, we only have these kids for X amount of time a year, a week in the summer, and then even during the season, we have these kids that have to rink 3-4 hours a day. So it's about instilling these lessons and these pro habits that they can then take home and use on their own. Like, I think for us, that's a huge thing. We talk about, standards that we expect pros to kind of be at and live at. It's about, having your own individual standards, which then kind of collectively make the group standard, right? I think that's a big lesson for us in terms of pro habits, values, how you treat people. Like, we're big on all that stuff, and then obviously we hammer home some video, talk about Preds hockey, just some themes and concepts that we use up top, and maybe get some continuity going throughout the organization.
Yeah, so it's a really important week. It's a huge week for the players that come in to kind of connect with the organization that drafted them. And again, like I said, there are invitees that come. There are players that the Predators identify that they say, hey, you know what, let's bring them in. Let's take a closer look at them. Dev Camp, not going to lie, it's my favorite week of the year, Emma. It's just so fun.
You love to see the little sprouts.
I love to see them, and we don't always get to see them with any consistency. So to see them one summer to the next, it's really fun to see what has improved. And, you and I had talked, and I think we mentioned this last week. One of the first things that jumped out to me was, I'm like, Matthew Wood has put on weight. These are the things we notice, which is okay when it's development camp. It's not really okay to do to other people, but
no, I will say, like, probably one of my favorite things about development camp is because, now, first of all, I spend most of my time, obviously, with the big club, with the NHL guys, and they, I love them, and we've gotten very comfortable together, and sometimes too comfortable together. And so we kind of just communicate almost exclusively in chirps. We just only say rude things to each other lovingly, but it's like right. It's how we show affection. It's fine. But the biggest difference I notice is to walk into the locker room at Centennial during Dev Camp. It's the same locker room that the big club uses, but you walk in, and at Dev Camp, these kids are so polite. They're so nice to me. And I'm like, thank you. This is the respect I deserve. And they're just like, it warms my heart, because you can tell they're all like, they're so eager and they're working so hard, and they don't know that I'm nobody. So they're like, oh yes, ma'am. They don't call me ma'am. I would probably slap them if they did that, but they, they're eager to impress. And I think it's cool to see. And again, it's nice to get some respect. So take some notes, NHL players.
Mr. Potato Head.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a frequent offender too, so
I know it really is true, and it's so fun as media because it is a very different it's just a different experience for us to get to talk to these young players. Some of them probably don't do as much media, of course. When by the time you get to the NHL, you're used to the cameras, you're used to the microphones, you're used to the questions. But a lot of these younger players are just kind of stepping into that media world. And it really is refreshing, and it's really fun, I think, for us. Like I said, I got a chance to talk to Aiden Fink from Penn State. Locked on Aiden Fink right here, baby. But, it's just really refreshing to talk to some of these younger players who are kind of kicking off their career and still working towards their goal as well. So yeah, I absolutely love it. It's also fun to see the relationships built. And Kalen Lind sort of talked about this, said this is his second year coming to development camp. And he said, I know the staff. I know some of these other players. I can come in and I can start kind of joking. That's my
I was like, are we talking like Kalen Lind now?
That just sort of
Ann.
He can come in and he can start joking with the coaches, and some of the other players. And so it's fun too to see that comfortability level and those relationships building between the coaching staff in Nashville and between these prospects that have been drafted maybe in the same year, maybe in different years as well. And they soak up so much information. I mean, Mark Borowiecki said, they have them off ice. They're talking nutrition. They're talking strength training. They're talking mental health. They're talking how do you conduct yourself off of the ice, and I love talking about, you start that standard with a guy right after you draft him because you want that continuity in your organization from top to bottom. So it's a really cool process. I know there are some other clubs that maybe don't invest as much in their development camp, and it's fun to see how much emphasis Nashville seems to put on investing in these young players.
Yeah, definitely. And you can tell that I think Andrew Gibson was the one who mentioned it, that their kind of motto throughout the week has been the standard. And I mean, that's what it is. Again, we know I love my Mike Tomlin. The standard is the standard. And I think that
Come on.
applies here. It's like you said, you're building that culture top to bottom. So everyone who's coming up through the system is coming in with this consistent messaging.
Yes. So coming up, Emma and I are going to share with you a couple of the players that stood out to us. We'll give you just kind of an overview of what we saw and what we liked in that Future Stars game as well. We're going to do that in just a moment. Want to let you know about a new Locked On Predators insider program that Emma and I are kicking off. It is via Subtext. Look, if you are as excited about this upcoming season, these new prospects, I don't know, Steven Stamkos in gold, and you want to talk some more about Nashville Predators hockey beyond the podcast, we want to invite you to join the insider program. You're going to get some bonus content. You're going to get immediate breaking news reaction. We'll give you in-game analysis during the season, and you're going to get a chance to chat with Emma and I about all things Nashville Predators. You can check out the program details by clicking on the link in our bio or the link in the description. All right, Emma, when you look back over the past week at Dev Camp, and I know we talked a little bit about some players last week, but who really jumped out at you as somebody that you're like, okay, this is a name worth filing away if you're a Nashville Predators fan?
Andrew Gibson. The more I see this kid, look, I thought it was a good trade when Barry Trotz traded for him before the draft. I thought it made sense just on paper. Looking at him, he's a big right shot defenseman, which is what they need. I didn't think that they had to give up too terribly much to go get him, and so I'm like, all right, well, this is nice. It seems like a good move. Watching this kid in camp this week, I mean, he looks like we were saying, they're just little sprouts. They're so young, all of these kids. He looks like a man among boys out there. And he's not significantly older than any of them. I mean, they're all around the same age, like 17 to 19, somewhere in there. I mean, he looked like a man out there.
Yes.
And he is going to be I'm very excited to watch him at training camp in the fall, because I think that he's still a little ways away. We talked to him today, and obviously, again, he's only 19, and so he's got one more year of juniors left before he can make the jump to the pro level and play in Milwaukee. But I think that, if this is what he looks like now, then I'm very optimistic. And he, he's a guy that when I talked to him on Monday, on the first day of development camp, he was saying that his, player comparison, his NHL player comparison, or what he aspired to be like, was like a Chris Tanev. So like a big physical guy who's not afraid to use his size, but also, and can block shots and hit guys, but he can also jump in and join the rush and contribute offensively as well. So he really prides himself on being a true two-way defenseman. We saw that he had a goal in the Future Stars game.
Sure did. Oh my gosh.
I think he even, that was a filthy slap shot too. Can't wait to see him continue to develop that. And that's what he says. The offensive piece of his game is what he's probably more focused on right now, because he feels, really content with the strides he's made defensively. But he had the goal. I think he even got a hit in on Igor Surin, which is saying something.
That's not nothing, y'all.
No, that boy was out for blood. He was just trying to hit everybody. He was. I think he lived up to the hype. I'm like, okay, Barry, all right, I understand why you wanted this kid last year and why you went out and got him. So that was a big one for me.
I absolutely agree with you. I think if you've been at Dev Camp, that is one of the big takeaways is you've got to keep your eye on Andrew Gibson. And like you said, he's going to go back to juniors. But this is somebody who shows a lot of what the Predators have talked about wanting to get on the blue line. And not just big size and likes hits, but really a pretty well-rounded game for as young as he is. I asked him after the Future Stars game, I said, okay, people, you're new to Nashville. Describe your game to the fans in Nashville. And this is how he described his own game.
Yeah, I think I'm a two-way defenseman. I like to use my size to my advantage. I like to play physical, but, I can also play with the puck. I can play on both sides, but I love killing penalties and blocking shots. That's a weird thing about me. I genuinely like blocking shots, hearing the crowd going, getting the guys going, and just, making the most out of it.
Now, I do not want to be a mother, but the mother in me is like, Andrew Gibson, be so careful. Be so careful.
When he said that, did you see he almost got a little crazy eyes? He's like, really? I love blocking shots.
I love blocking the shots. And I was like, you don't ever hear that.
This is kind of, I say this about goalies a lot, and I think that this would apply here too, is like, you've got to be a little nutty, just like a little crazy to some degree, because you are like voluntarily getting vulcanized rubber shot at you like all the time at very high speeds, and you want to do this and you're not even flinching like that. That's why I'm like, you got to be a little off your nut a little bit. But
yes,
I think this would apply here too. But I'm like, hey, if you're that kind of weird, then embrace it, go for it, go block all of the shots, Andrew Gibson. Just, yes, be careful.
Be careful. Well, and the Nashville Predators are like, yeah, you do. I mean, that's a huge thing to come in and say, you know what, here's kind of a weird side of my game. I love blocking shots and likes to play on the penalty kill. And I'm like, okay, so this isn't a player and I'm with you. Let's get him in training camp and kind of see where he's at when you're playing up against Ryan O'Reilly, Philip Forsberg, those kind of guys. But this is a young player that is a very exciting addition to the prospect pool. My player that kind of stood out to me, and I know we talked about him last week, but played with Andrew Gibson a lot in the Future Stars game, is defenseman Tanner Molendyk. And this is another player who came in a little bit bigger. He still needs to put on some weight. Just, again, I don't want to mom him, but please put on a little more weight if you're going to go out and play in the NHL. But what an amazing talent Molendyk is. Mark Borowiecki talked with us about Tanner Molendyk one of the days last week. And he was saying, there's a couple different kinds of speed in the NHL. Like there is, speed in small spaces, where you kind of these bursts of speed. And then you have this speed that sort of opens up space. And he's like, usually guys have one or the other. Molendyk does both, and he can handle the puck really well. And so it's such an interesting game to watch. It's an interesting game to watch when you watch Tanner Molendyk, because you are, of course, mesmerized by his skating, which is exceptional, but also, the puck handling skills. And we saw that in the Future Stars game as well. And it was very interesting to watch he and Gibson together. I was like, okay, Could that be a glimpse into the future? I don't know. Now, he, of course, too, is going back to juniors. He plays for the Saskatoon Blades, and we'll go back there. And just for people who are like, hey, I would like to watch Tanner Mollendijk through the year, how do I do that? Well, you pay a little cash, friends. But if you're wanting to watch some of these prospects in, the OHL, WHL, you can get a subscription to, it's called CHL TV. It's Canadian Hockey League TV. You pay a price and then you can get the different games. So you could watch Tanner Mollendijk play and some of these other prospects. So I did want to throw that out there as well, just as we talk about these prospects. It would be remiss of us not to talk about Kaylin Lind, who I know we already talked a little bit about, where I accidentally slipped into my Kaylin Lind. Oh, y'all, he's so fun. He is, when we talk about delightful opportunities for the media, it's talking to Kaylin Lind. And I thought he made such an interesting point when he was kind of looking back at development camp, because you come into dev camp and you want to soak in what Mark Borowiecki tells you and what the coaches are telling you and what you're learning in these off ice things. But he made a really great point about one of the other benefits of coming to this camp is seeing the skills of the other prospects. And this is what he had to say.
For me, it's getting bigger and stronger and kind of learning from the coaches and the experience, and even picking out little things from other guys' games. They're all very good prospects. We're all here for a reason. We all got different aspects to our game, and you kind of see different guys with different skill sets out there, and you kind of want to almost pick things out of guys' games that you can kind of put in your game and kind of make yourself a better hockey player for sure.
So these guys are picking out what they like from other players as well. I think it's just great that it kind of broadens some of what they may want to decide to add to their game. Also, let's talk for just a minute about the fact that he wants to get bigger and stronger. I don't remember if we mentioned this last week about Kaylin Lind. That young man is eating 4,000 calories a day to put weight on.
And you would never know.
You would never know. He is working so hard.
He's trying. And you know what? I thought another thing that he said, and it wasn't in that clip, but another thing that he said that I thought was funny when he was talking about the differences between last year and this year coming to development camp. He was talking about, he's a little more comfortable and, knows the guys and everything. So he's like, so I can be joking, what you said before. And I'm like, wait a minute. So you weren't joking around last year? Because I feel like you were shy. Yeah. I was like, that was you shy? I'm like, this is great. Like, this kid's going to be a quote machine. I can't wait.
He is so fun. Future Stars game. We got to see all of these guys play. Kasper Kulanumi had 2 goals in the game and had a shootout goal. Nobody threw their hat. I was a little disappointed for Kasper Kulanumi. Just FYI. Felix Nielsen had a goal. Gibson, like you mentioned, great slap shot. We do have to talk about Igor Surin, who, bless his heart, made it 32 seconds into the Future Stars game before he got to finally land a hit. Like, they played a 3-on-3.
So happy.
He was so happy. He's waited all week, y'all. They did a 3-on-3 tournament on Friday. I think it was Friday. It's all a blur now, y'all. And they divided the ice in half with these like kind of foam dividers. And Mark Borowiecki I had to explicitly tell him, do not board into that. That does not hold you.
Those are made for 8-year-olds. It will not go well.
It will not go well. And man, Igor Surin, not only does he come out and yes, you do see the physicality, but puck handling skills, skating through the defense, scored the first goal of the game and was right on the celebration. He was like, oh yes, I'm here. So it was really fun. I think he is. Y'all are going to love Igor Surin. You're going to love that boy.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So great. So lots of amazing things that we got to see this past week in development camp from those prospects. Of course, lots to look forward to when we're talking about the Nashville Predators roster as well. Nobody forget that Steven Stamkos, Jonathan Marchessault, and Brady Shea are now Nashville Predators. We're going to talk about what their impact is going to be on this team coming up later this week. So make sure you stay tuned for that. Before we sign off, though, Emma, let everyone know where they can find you, where they can find your work.
can find me on social media at Emma_Lingen. You can also find Minka there. She is trying to peek into the frame here. And you can find my work, which she often helps edit for me, at the Hockey News.
Yes, and we are always here for a Minka appearance. We are very Minka friendly on Locked On Predators.
Locked on Minka.
Locked On Minka, baby. You can follow me on social media at AnnK_Mama on Ice. You can find my work at penaltyboxradio.com as well. Be sure that you are following the podcast on social media, LO_Predators. Of course, you can check us out on your favorite podcasting platform, and we're on YouTube. Make sure you check that out there. Subscribe so you'll always know when we have a new episode dropping. That is going to do it for today's Locked On Predators podcast for this Monday. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We'll be back tomorrow with an all-new episode. We'll see you then.